Thank you so much for watching Landom C Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. 10 to Midnight is a 1983 thriller film that was directed by J. Lee Thompson from a screenplay originally written by William Roberts. The movie stars Charles Bronson in the lead role with a supporting cast that includes Lisa Albacher, Andrew Stevens, Gene Davis, Jeffrey Lewis, and Wilford Brimley. It was released to the American cinemas March 11th, 1983. The storyline follows a young, handsome, and physically fit guy that kills women who reject him. His creepy behavior just turns them off. He's always one step ahead of the lawmen who are after him because he seems like an expert at constructing solid alibis and doing his criminal activity completely nude to minimize evidence and blood, and he always uses latex gloves to hide his fingerprints. But one veteran cop is hell-bent on taking him down, even if it means stepping outside of proper procedure. When the script was originally written, the title of it was called Bloody Sunday, and producer Pancho Coner said he and the Cannon Group chairman gave this movie its new title of 10 to Midnight, despite it having no apparent relevance to the film's story. Coner successfully pitched the title with Bronson in the lead and a description of the film as a great action and great danger and great revenge flick to the buyers without a script. They then found themselves scrambling to find a story for the project, and they settled on an already written screenplay called Bloody Sunday. Later, marketing for the movie did suggest a connection with the title, and when it was released on DVD, it had a tagline that read, "A cop, a killer, a deadline." The initial opening scene that you see with Charles Bronson typing a report at the police station was originally supposed to be 20 minutes into the film, but it was edited and placed in the beginning to appeal to his fan base by showing an establishment of his character before the killer ever appears. The original script called for Leo Kessler, played by Bronson, to wrestle Warren Stacy to the ground in a final confrontation. But Charles Bronson wasn't having any of that. He stated that he wasn't going to get that up and close and personal with a completely nude man. Playboy playmate Gina Keno said she was really upset when Charles Bronson told her during filming that he had wanted her to play his daughter, but the filmmakers told him that she was just too tall. In reality, she was 5'7", the same height as the actress that they did cast. But she had lied about her height on her Playboy modeling profile, saying that she was 5'9". That lie cost her a much better role in the movie. After attending a screening of the film, producer Pancho Coner and Charles Bronson and his wife, Jill Ireland, went to a trendy sushi restaurant to celebrate. During the dinner, Coner noticed that Bronson was quiet and seemed down in the dumps, thinking that he didn't like the film. He then told him to cheer up, that it was a good movie. Bronson went on to tell him that it wasn't the film he was upset about. It was the fact that he hated sushi. Now, it's said that the inspiration for the film comes from several real-life cases, one being that of Richard Speck, who murdered 8 student nurses, and a Scotland Yard investigator who was fired from his job for planting evidence to convict a killer. And as it turned out, that killer committed 3 murders before being convicted. Also, Ted Bundy kind of slides into the film in the fact that he was a good-looking man who drove around looking for his women victims, which he was able to convince that he was a normal, good-looking college guy. It's said that Gene Davis took this role pretty seriously as he plays this killer. He was pretty physical in all the scenes that he did. And in one particular scene, he dislocated an actress's arm during the final murder and massacre sequence. They actually came up with 3 different endings for the film and considered all of them until they settled on this final version. This is one of 2 movies that Charles Bronson is featured with Gene Davis in. The other is Messenger of Death from 1988. Not surprisingly, both were directed by J. Lee Thompson, and in both, Davis plays a killer. Although the character that Warren Stacy plays is portrayed as being someone in his late teens, possibly his early 20s, Gene Davis was actually 31 at the time of the movie's release. But he does have somewhat of a baby face, which makes it pretty easy for him to fill this role. As we said earlier, the title means nothing to do with the context of the film, and the director really borrowed heavily from Alfred Hitchcock in his editing scenes, much like Hitchcock did in Psycho, creating full horror of blades being thrust into bellies without the viewer ever actually seeing it happen. It really does, in some places, remind you of the shower scene in Psycho from 1960. You see, slasher films were gaining a following in the 80s thanks to the success of such films as Halloween from 78 and Friday the 13th from 1980. But this film was much less gory compared to any of these films or ones that came out later on. The audience gets to spend more time getting to know the killer compared to the other slasher movies, which the killer is hidden and only comes out when he's ready to kill. In one scene, Paul McCann, played by Andrew Stevens, tries to trick the killer by changing the names of the star actors from the movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid by saying that Newman and McQueen were in it instead of Newman and Redford. Now, the script called for Warren Stacy to appear completely nude in many scenes, so Gene Davis wanted to break the ice with his co-stars and get the awkwardness out of the way before they began shooting. He actually walked around the set with no clothes on. Lisa Eilbacher refused to look at his private parts, her eyes immediately turning away. So as a joke, Davis tied a red bow around his appendage to draw her attention to it. The film drew scathing reviews from most of the film critics, but it has since maintained a sizable cult following. You can go back and take a look at this film, but you'll probably be somewhat disappointed. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.